Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 7. This season's providing a lot to talk about. It's interesting. So we are officially 3 episodes into Season 7 of The Flash, which means one thing. Well, two things, I guess. The first being that we are, 3 episodes into Season 7 of The Flash, but also that we are now done with what was supposed to be the Season 6 story. So now, starting with this week's episode, or this week's upcoming episode, that being Episode 4, we are officially into the proper Season 7 that was planned. And while the trailer for Episode 4 doesn't really indicate any major moving pieces for the next graphic novel or story arc that we are getting on the show, the cliffhanger for the end of Episode 3 or at the end of Episode 3 sure did let us know what is coming in more than one way. More like 4 ways. So as we saw at the end of Episode 3, we cut back to 18 hours earlier from the conclusion, which was the point in the episode in which Iris was able to relay her leftover crumbs, I guess you could call it, of the Speed Force based off connections to Barry in the past, and when she also had Barry's DNA for that episode and was a speedster, this causing the fusion sphere to be powered by an actual sort of natural Speed Force rather than an artificial one which we had previously. But what we didn't see earlier in the episode is that above Star Labs, right where everyone was, that the energy from the fusion sphere not only powered this Speed Force for Barry, but created 3 other forces with 3 different lightning colors. But you might be wondering, okay, well, what are these 3 new colors supposed to represent? Well, first, we need to actually acknowledge the fact that there was also the normal Speed Force lightning, and yes, Barry got his speed back, so you'd expect that. However, that Speed Force lightning above Star Labs shot out somewhere else into Central City, indicating that it would affect someone else other than Barry, just like those other 3 lightning colors would affect other people as well. So who could it possibly hit? Now, I think there is one clear option, and that is that it will hit Godspeed of the present day. Now, whether that is actually August Hart or someone else who conveniently also takes up the mantle and name of Godspeed, that's another question. But Eric Wallace, who's the showrunner of The Flash, has said that we will see the real Godspeed this season, indicating that we are yet to see he or she on the show as of yet. Mina Darwan is another solid option. She was the author of the book that Chester was reading in Episode 1, and she is also someone that was hit by the Speed Force storm in the comics, like Godspeed was. Outside of those 2, you could list a good amount of random names, and they would probably be as likely as each other, but less likely than the first 2 of Godspeed and Mina Darwan. But let's see what happens there. It wouldn't surprise me too much if we didn't find out who the Speed Force lightning hit until much later, after we learn who the other lightning colors hit at the very least. But on to the other colors. So we had 3 other colors, those being blue, red, and green. It's almost like we're playing Pokemon. Chuck in the yellow, from the Speed Force, that being Pikachu, and we're playing Pokemon Yellow. Will younger people get the reference? I don't know, was that a boomer moment? I don't know. But anyway, the main thing that needs to be pointed out is these colors aren't for other speedsters. I saw people getting confused. They are the colors of other forces. Just like how we have the Speed Force, which is for speedsters, the other forces have different traits and abilities and everything like that. But let's go in alphabetical order with these colors, starting with blue. So the blue that we saw up there in the sky represents the Sage Force. Now the Sage Force will be the first of these new forces that we will be introduced to by the looks of it in episode 5, when we meet the character of Psyche, who was featured in the synopsis for that very episode. Now the Sage Force enhances the intelligence of its users to super genius levels, as well as granting them psychic powers such as telepathy and telekinesis. Now in the show, we know that Psyche will be able to make those he chooses to strike face their greatest fears, which could range from a tiny little mouse that someone's scared of to a 10-foot spider. That's probably what I'm scared of. But next up was the color green, which we saw, which represents the Still Force. Now, there have been a few different uses of the Still Force in the comics when we saw it, but on the show, the characters that showed some abilities, as well as extreme similarities to the Still Force, were the 2 turtle characters. The first one from Season 2 was a very basic version of it, but the version of the turtle that we saw in Season 6, or as I think Cisco called them, Turtle 2.0, which was a female, she was very close to the Still Force from the comics, to the point where I actually thought they were introducing the Still Force through her character in that season. Now those connected to the Still Force can tap into it to negate motion, which we've seen those 2 versions do, bearing the potential to induce and accelerate the force of energy dispersal. The Still Force users can actually decelerate or even halt their own aging, also drain life force energy from others, and even create physical constructs with their power, almost like Green Lantern style. Now, will we see that later option? I highly doubt it, but those other options could be fairly lethal, especially if someone's not controlling their powers. Imagine they just randomly grab someone, they just start draining them of their life to the point where they're like a skeleton. Like, that would be super creepy, especially if you did not intend to do it. So that could be a bit of a scary moment for whoever is given or cursed with the Still Force powers at some stage in the next few episodes. And finally, we have the Red Lightning, or the Charmander Lightning, whichever way you want to word it, up there, which represents the Strength Force. Now, what this gives its users is pretty damn obvious by the name, and that is, radically enhanced strength as well as durability, which is you can give it as much as you can take. Now, there were actually a few different uses of the Strength Force in the comics when it was first brought in, before its more well-known user got to it, or at least before we were introduced to them. But I doubt the show will touch on those previous users just due to like time constraints. So we're probably just going to meet like the main person from the comics that's attached to it. And that's Alexa Antigone, who was otherwise known as Fweza in the comics. It's going to be interesting to see if the whole thing spreads further than Central City, because in the comics it's a bit more of a going a bit intergalactic. We're not going into space. It goes a bit more international, but I can think just for the sake of the show, they might just make it that it might go to some cities just outside of Central City, but I don't think we're going to be going to different countries and stuff like that. If anything, they might just try and keep it within Central City, but we'll have to wait and see what they do. Now, in the comics, there is a villain attached to all this stuff, and someone that's got a bigger look at things, and they're trying to take advantage of it. Now, as you can imagine, each of these individual forces of the Speed Force, the Sage Force, the Still Force, and the Strength Force, they all have their pros and cons, and they might be more useful against each other in certain different ways. Sort of like Pokemon. You have, I don't know, why are we relating this so much to Pokemon? I don't know. But anyway, they've all got their pros and cons against each other. However, in the comics, there was someone that was trying to take advantage of all of them, and that was someone called Hunter Zolomon, aka Zoom. And he was actually the one who tricked someone in the comics, actually it was Wally West, and also Barry technically, to actually release these other forces. So I think there's going to be someone in the background who's actually trying to obtain all these different forces, and they might even have the Speed Force themselves already, so they're trying to get the Sage Force, the Still Force, and the Strength Force themselves to become this like overpowered being. Now, as I was saying before, it was Hunter Zolomon in the comics. I don't think they're going to do that. However, is it very, very possible and plausible and likely that whoever gets hit by the Speed Force from that burst of energy that goes up is the Speedster that's trying to get the Sage, Still, and Strength Force for themselves? And we're logically thinking that that Speedster will be Godspeed. So is Godspeed going to be the one that's going to be hunting these other people and trying to take their different forces, which then relates to the comics where Godspeed was taking people's speed? It's a good way to go down. I think it's a decent theory to think of. The only issue that comes with that is that you would be making Godspeed a pretty villainous being unless he wasn't killing these people. So if he's not killing who gets the Sage Force, who gets the Still Force, and who gets the Strength Force, then it's fine. If he's killing them and just becomes a straight up villain, it becomes some inaccuracy to the comics because Godspeed isn't truly a villain overall. He's more of an anti-hero. But I guess you can interpret him whichever way you want as long as it fits the storyline and there's nothing that sort of contradicts it at any stage. But moving on from Godspeed, one thing needs to be pointed out, and some of you guys have agreed with me with this, some of you don't, which is fair enough. This is just my observation from episode 3 and when all of this was happening. So when Iris does the fusion sphere thing, and I think I mentioned this in my review as well, and the light goes up and all the different force colors go everywhere, there's one person who's not focusing on Iris, giving her, allowing Barry to get his speed back and stuff. There's one person who's focusing on something else, and that's the original Harrison Wells. So he's at that little, platform thing, overseeing the fusion sphere going off. However, he looks over everyone else and he's sort of looking out onto Central City. Now, logically, I think the windows would have been closed, but he's not looking at anyone in that room. He's looking elsewhere. And I'm pretty sure he's looking out into Central City, looking at all those different colored lightning things either hit people or just the sky changing and them going in different directions. He knows something's up there. Now, does this mean that this original Harrison Wells is now a villain and he's going to be, tracing these things? No, I don't think that's what's going on. However, we do know at the end of the episode that he apparently, he can like sort of time hop. He can go to any point in time that he wants to, which is a bit of an overpowered ability, but fair enough. But he says he's going back to spend as much time as he can with his wife, relive those 4 years that they were together over and over and over again. But a lot of people were saying that seems like it would be torture because you don't have to reset all the time, and that time you spend can be negated and everything like that. So did he truly go back to spend time with his wife Tess Morgan, or did he go off to do something else? Did he go back in time to research these other forces potentially, or maybe even go ahead in time to see where they are, then maybe can go back in time to research them a bit more? They have said that there's a twist attached to this new Wells that leads into a story, and I do wonder if it's connected to this. I'm not saying it is, but he was looking out on Central City. He wasn't looking at anyone in that room, so he was looking at what was going on out there. So he knows about these different forces at the beginning. So I'm intrigued to see where that goes, but I think Wells is going to, that original Harrison Wells is going to be connected to it, in the end. I don't think he made them. He could have. I just don't think they're going to make him bad. So I just think maybe he's doing his own sort of thing with them. But we'll have to wait and see. Maybe he's evil. Who knows? But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts on this. Are you excited about this storyline and seeing all these different forces? Do you think Godspeed's the one that's going to be trying to maybe contain them all and trying to become this overpowered being? Do you think Wells is actually evil and that's doing it? Or do you think it's someone else? Do you think it's Zoom? Maybe it's Zoom. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.